All right, we're recording, so you all can go ahead and start.
So I do not, do we have a formal agenda, Ian, that I'm supposed to follow that I do not have printed in front of me?
Yeah, we just have the minutes from the last strategic session to approve and then comments from the public, but I don't see any members of the public here. So, and then we can get started with the strategic planning stuff.
Got it. So do we have any comments on the minutes, folks? That being none, and I'm assuming we have a quorum, Ian?
Yes.
Okay, again, all but raise a hand or say aye, and we can approve that and move on to Chris's awesome thought.
And
Aye.
Got it.
Keith, I also wanted to briefly point out, so Shelby Edwards is our new member here on the partnership and executive committee. So we finalized that this week. So I don't know if you want to give her a moment to just briefly introduce herself.
So thank you, Ian. And Shelby, usually our meetings are run much better than this because the chairman shows up on time. So if you can introduce yourself, that would be great.
Of course. Hello, everybody. My name is Shelby Marie Edwards. I use she, her, and hers. I'm the executive director of FAR, the Public Housing Association of Residents here in Charlottesville, Virginia. I'm born and raised in Charlottesville, went through all the school systems. I went to undergrad at VTU and I went to graduate school at the University of Chicago in Chicago, Illinois. Most people know me from the arts sphere. I had worked with live arts before I started working at FAR Seville, and I'm really excited to be advocating for and with low-income residents in the Charlottesville area. So I'm really excited to be a part.
Thank you. We want to do a little round table to introduce the rest of the team that's on here. Would you be interested in that, Shelby? So I'll start. My name is Keith Smith.
Wait, Keith, before we go on, the minute, since I'm taking minutes here, did someone make a motion for minutes and someone second? Because if they did, I don't.
No, Gretchen, I'm moving this a little too fast. Thank you for catching that. So,
I move to approve the minutes.
thank you, Greg, for keeping me straight. Can I get a
Thank you,
second,
Greg.
please?
Second.
Thank you.
Colette, thank you.
I
We
appreciate it.
already, well, just to make it right, everybody in favor, please say aye again.
Aye.
Aye, thank you very much. I'll get back on track. I'm just off of my game a little bit here. Can folks see me? I think I'm having a bit of an internet issue on my side.
You're good right now?
For whatever reason, everybody else is frozen on my screen. So let me try something else.
So while Keith's getting that straight, let's go ahead and just do some introductions. So Shelby gets the benefit of getting just brief introductions from everyone. If you just do your name, what organization you're with, and how long you've been on the executive committee or with the partnership. And then whether you're excited about snow or not excited about snow. And then we'll and then pass the mic to somebody when you're done. So that way we're not awkwardly staring at each other, waiting for the next person to go. And so Shelby, actually, you and I have talked on the phone before for City of Promise. And when you mentioned that you're with FAR, it clicked for me. I was like, I recognize that name. So I'm with the Spark Mill, facilitating, glad to be here with you all. And so I'm gonna pass the mic to Colette.
Hi, Shelby. Welcome. I'm Colette Sheehy. My day job is the Senior Vice President for Operations and State Government Relations at the University of Virginia. And I think that I've been on the partnership since its formation. And, you know, snow is okay. I like it on the weekend if I don't have to, you know, travel. I don't think we're going to get very much.
And who'd you like to pass the mic to, Colette?
Nice to meet you. Oh, Greg.
Colette. Welcome, Shelby. I'm Greg Powell. I'm an architect in Charlottesville, Powell Studio Architects. We focus a lot of our practice on doing affordable housing for such clients as Piedmont Housing Alliance and Habitat and others. And I've been involved since before the founding of the formal founding of the Regional Housing Partnership. I think it sort of grew out of a series of seminars that we did 2-3 years ago on the subject of affordable Anthony.
Hey, I'm Anthony Harrow. I'm the director for Thomas Jefferson Area Coalition for the Homeless. And I have also been on the Regional Housing Partnership since the beginning and try to represent the needs of folks in the community who don't have any housing. So, thanks.
Thank you, Anthony, and I apologize all, and I think I've got my Wi-Fi issue fixed and I can see your beautiful faces. So I'm assuming Greg, Anthony, did somebody go before I chimed back in?
Colette went.
Okay, thank you, Colette. Ned, how about you? Introduce yourself, sir.
Was that Ned?
Ned, yes.
Sorry, I apologize for being late, everyone. Ned Galloway, so I'm a supervisor on the Elmore County Board of Supervisors. I've been on the Regional Housing Partnership since its inception and currently serve as the vice chair, and looking forward to today. Is that all we're doing? I didn't hear the instructions.
It's good.
You and I are both late, by the way, so we're trying to fill it in. Rachel.
I think for strategic planning purposes, we should look at the strength of leadership, perhaps, of sexuality.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel. I'm also with the Spark Mill co-facilitating with Chris today. And I don't hate snow, but I'd rather not be around it. And I'll pass it to Gretchen.
I am Gretchen Thomas. I work with TJPDC as the administrative assistant. You will not hear my voice unless I need to ask who made a motion to approve minutes. I have already said I am not a big fan of snow. Please give me spring. I'm ready.
So Gretchen's real job is to keep Keith and Ned, maybe more me, in line and moving forward. My name is Keith Smith. I'm the chairman of the Regional Housing Partnership. I'm also, like Ned, a member of the Planning District, Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission. And I'm excited about an opportunity today to chat, and maybe Chris, we can up the tempo a little bit and get out before the snow gets bad and we're not going to be able to make it out to Fluvanna County where I live. And whoever wished for snow for Christmas, we should have a serious conversation with.
All right. We will absolutely move this along. Let Ian give Ian a chance to share, and then we'll dive in.
Yeah, hey everyone, Ian Baxter here at the TJPDC. I've been here for 6 months, but I've been with the RHP my whole time at the TJPDC. So I, like Keith, hate snow right now, so I'd like it to not snow tonight. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you all for doing some introductions. And as I was saying earlier, that when people think about 3 hours on Zoom, their eyes start to roll the back of their head. You've got to be kidding me. We will move this around. We're going to use breakout rooms as we go forward. If you've not used breakout rooms, don't worry. We'll make sure you go through, because we like to have our conversations in small groups so that way it gives everybody the opportunity to have conversation and speak into the space. That said, I want to encourage my extroverts to step back a little bit and pause before you speak, and my introverts to speak a little more into the space. We create space for each other so that, again, we get the benefit of everybody's thoughts, ideas, and wisdom and experience in the conversation. We do have an agenda. I'm going to drop a link to a Google Doc.
So let me interrupt you for a second, Chris. I'm probably on the extrovert side of things. So everybody knows I'm tracking the storm. So just so everybody knows.
Okay. And if we need updates, we will make sure we get it to you and let us know when it starts hitting that area. Because again, as I was lamenting earlier, we're not getting any here, and I'm distraught about that. Okay, I just put a Google Doc into the chat. I want to invite everybody to take a look at that. I will also share my screen. This is where we're going to be taking all of our notes. And normally if we were in a room together, they'd be posted all over the walls, and we'd be capturing thoughts that way. But this is how we're capturing our notes today. And that, let me share this. And any thoughts or ideas that are captured on this document as we go further down, any ideas or thoughts that are captured will get put into the report, just so you know that. And so again, we're not grading people on spelling or anything like that. We will clean it up for misspelling and things like that. But please do make sure that as Rachel and I are going through and giving instructions on the exercises, that you're capturing the thoughts, and we want to get a robust version of folks' thoughts and ideas. And then when we come back together in the large group, we will share out. We'll have time to share out. So don't pay attention to the times. We will manage it so that we get the work done that we need to get done. But this is roughly the flow of what we're going to be doing. We will be taking a break about midway through, just because about after 90 minutes, people again start needing to kind of get antsy and need to move around. And so again, this is where we are going to begin. Today, the purpose of the day is going to start broad, and we're going to work our way narrow to more concrete ideas. So in broadly thinking, our first exercise is going to be called Map of Our Landscape. And that's where we're going to invite you to brainstorm and process together. And this is external to the Regional Housing Partnership. We will talk about the Regional Housing Partnership as an organization later on, but right now we're talking about external context. So what are the positive trends that are affecting your work, affordable housing in the community, in the region? What are the positive trends impacting that? Likewise, what are the negative trends that impact your work? Again, external. Likewise, what is the economic and political climate? And it doesn't have to be a value judgment. It could just be, it is. It might be good, it might be bad, but what is the economic and political environment that affects the work that you're doing? And then what are the client needs? And you can define clients as your group wants to, but what do clients need? What does the community need? And oftentimes there's overlap. And then after that, what are you not sure about? What are the uncertainties that are going on in the external environment that impact you all? And so we are going to give you, we'll start out with 10 minutes just to have those conversations. And you're going to be in team 1 or team 2. So we break you out into the breakout rooms. Room 1 is going to be team 1. Room 2 is going to be team 2. And you're just going to go through each box and start to kind of fill in your thoughts and ideas in each appropriate box. Any questions before we split you out? All right. Hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and break you out. Gretchen, you will be going into one of the rooms and you can choose whether to participate or not. But just know that, again, everything's being captured in the document, so you don't have to necessarily take notes on that. And so with that, I'm going to open up all the rooms. Enjoy your conversations. We'll bring you back in 10 minutes. So we'll be coming back here right around 12:40, and I'll do that through breakout rooms. Enjoy your conversations. All right, welcome back, everyone. Sorry if you got cut off saying something really important or necessary for the conversation. Great, look like you all having good conversations. Great work filling out the boxes and capturing your conversations. I'm going to share a screen real quick, and we'd love to hear from each group. We'll start with team 1. Tell us a little bit about kind of, you don't have to go word for word because you'll get to see it in the report. But like, what were some of the things that were kind of key for each box for you all? Team 1, I know who's in your group. I can call on people if you need me to.
I don't know what team I was in.
So this box right here. So team 1 was Anthony, Ian, Ned, and Keith.
No, we were team 2. We were team 2.
This
That's
guy-
not our notes. I can
We
tell you
wrote
that
it. Yeah, we wrote it in a different box if we were team.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. So
Does it
all
look
right.
like me?
So then Colette, Greg, Gretchen, and Shelby. Are these your notes, or were you all kind of jump?
Who scribed those? That appears.
I
to be-
am the scribe. I am the
Ah.
scribe.
So that's us.
Yeah, that's us.
So you want a quick overview? You know, there was one of the highlights is the active engagement of UVA in the affordable housing issue. The uncertainties are around the economy, particularly construction costs still being out of control, and shortage of supplies means schedules are all out of whack. Politically, we have a new council in Charlottesville. We don't know whether that's a positive or a negative to this particular issue. I think it's a positive. We have a new state government. which, through Virginia housing has some significant impact on the ability to build affordably. And that's new, so that's a bit of an unknown as well. And COVID-19 continues to make all our lives uncertain.
Okay, great. All right, thank you, Team 1. All right, the team formerly known as Team 1. Team 2, tell us a little bit about your conversation.
You want to jump in, Ned?
I think that, we started off with talking about that there does seem to be broad regional support, political, community-wide support for affordable housing. It led into a more nuanced conversation about NIMBYism. NIMBYism is a little bit more about the traditional, too much traffic, too much density, or aesthetics, but nobody's saying we don't want affordable housing. To the point that there's more of a discussion about what is affordable housing and what's the best way to go about addressing it, but not using it as a way to go stop this rezoning or development. So that started off our conversation. But I believe, it's just something that I think it's a little bit more nuanced to just say we've got a NIMBYism as an issue. It's a different piece. Anthony, Ian, I'll let you guys chime in as well.
Sure. So we spoke about rising housing costs as a negative trend, certainly, that we're experiencing right now. And as a result, client need would be, subsidies to be able to still live in housing in a climate of rising housing costs. And uncertainties, new state leadership, how does this affect state funding for affordable housing, which is the past couple of years have been pretty robust, relatively speaking. So yeah, there was the announcement from the governor just last week was pretty awesome. Lots of support for local affordable housing projects. So yeah, uncertainties there, and also future economic circumstances we talked about as well. So a really interesting time where there's a lot of opportunity, but also external factors like economic and rising housing costs make it tricky to really capitalize on. But yeah, lots of interesting things going on.
Yeah, and I think one of the critical points that I think Keith sort of illustrated at the end is that, and it kind of built off our discussion, is we are a regional body. We're dealing with different definitions of affordable housing, and even really different definitions of NIMBYism or the other side, YIMBYism, like what people do want when they support housing, what types of housing are people advocating for. And so how do those external needs of our community sort of fit into what the Regional Housing Partnership does? Is there an educational component of us really thinking critically about, in sort of the same vein of what we did for the Regional Housing Plan? Is there a way for us to sort of think critically about the different challenges surrounding housing and how they fit into a regional context, whether that be a rural, ex-urban, suburban, and then urban context? Like what does affordable housing look like, and all the challenges associated look like in each of those contexts? I feel like was a really good point.
Great.
Ian caught all my thoughts and then, so thank you.
Awesome. Well, good. Well, that gives kind of the context. So that's the context, and those are the things in which you're operating and trying to do your work and trying to work across the region. And so I'm going to turn over to Rachel, who's going to guide us to now start to focus more on the Regional Housing Partnership.
Yeah. So the next thing that we're going to do is kind of define who you guys are and what your purpose is. So we've started out this sentence: the Central Virginia Regional Housing Partnership exists to, and then everybody's going to make up the end of that sentence with only 6 words. So you can only use 6 words. An ampersand is fine. It can just be a symbol instead of a word if need be. But try to keep it to 6 words maximum. And then we're gonna break you out into groups, and as a group, you guys will share your individual thoughts on why your organization exists, and then through consensus, figure out a single statement that would represent your thoughts as a group. So just to clarify, you're finishing the sentence. Why do you exist? Using 6 words, come up with one as an individual, and then work with your group to come up with one as a group. Any questions on this activity? All right.
All right. And group 1 or room 1 will be team 1 and room 2 will be team 2 to put your thoughts down. And you'll have 10 minutes to do your individual one as well as the group one. And so we'll see you back here about 1 o'clock. All right, everybody, welcome back. And let me share screen. And Rachel, do you want to debrief with everyone?
All right. So group 2, tell us about your conversation and how you got to your final 6 words.
Greg, you were the catalyst.
So we got it down to 5 words. I don't know if we get extra points.
Extra points.
Facilitate creation of increased affordable housing. I mean, it's that simple, I think.
Okay.
Were there any words that you all were like quibbling over, or like, no, you nailed it and you're good?
Oh, no, we're missing the word regional.
I put it in. Yeah, I put it in.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, I was looking at the red notes.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the major. We wanted to make sure it has regional in it.
I think that all took up about 3 minutes.
Awesome.
Okay. What about group 1? How did you guys get to your statement, and what is it?
We talked. So the statement is that we came to is exists to collaboratively support affordable housing needs. And we got here by, I think, having a more diverse option of approaches, where we talked through what word would best describe the CVRHP's role, because we're not really creating affordable housing, we're not building it, we're something broad enough to describe accurately what we're doing, but keep it broad enough as well. So support seemed generally broad enough. Collaborative was something that was common across all the different ones that we came up with, and so we just kind of just put those together. We did talk about affordable, whether that needs to be called out or not, only in the fact that there are many needs, and so, but we decided to put it in there. There was a suggestion to have that even qualified even more by using deeply, but I think we just to try to keep it to 6, we came to this, that one.
So what I find interesting is you use the word needs, which we did. We're supporting housing, you're supporting housing needs.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about that nuance for a minute.
Well, I mean, we didn't discuss that nuance, but I mean, just kind of reacting to the question is, the partnership is the localities and who they work with are the ones solving the problem. They're the one actually doing the things. We're here to support those efforts. I guess that's how I respond to the nuance.
And to build off of that, I think we all know there's a difference between what we want and what is needed. And I think answering to the call of a need versus a want and making sure that the two are differentiated is important.
To me, the word needs gets beyond the end product of just more houses, which I think might be a good thing, because there are many influences or challenges to developing more housing, more affordable housing, that go beyond just the mechanics of the housing.
Right, transportation, etc.
Yes, yeah. So the word needs, I think, is a positive addition that we didn't.
I'm also kind of curious about the difference between facilitating and collaboratively supporting. Are they similar, or are you guys in the same area? Are they aligned, or are they different activities? I'm just kind of curious about that difference.
I think I'm in the private sector where we just try to get things done, but I think realistically collaboratively supporting is probably a more realistic goal of this organization. We're influencers here, we're not the doers. So I came up with facilitating, and I'm deferring to the better term of collaboratively support.
I would agree 100% to that. I like that word, collaborating.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's I love that you just said that you guys are influencers, because that's a great kind of segue into our next activity where we're going to.
Just not social media influencers, right?
Not that
I don't
kind of
want to be that, whatever that is.
Not that
Whatever
kind
it
of
is.
On TikTok, Anthony.
We should get one for the CVRHP. That's how we.
All right.
All right. Well, so as Rachel said, that is a great segue to this next exercise, which is called stakeholder mapping. And so we have pre-filled 5 different, what we believe are stakeholders, what we heard from you all. You can add more. And again, we're going to break out into groups again to have this conversation. But what we're going to ask you to do is to be thinking about your stakeholders as you're collaboratively facilitating this to support needs, whatever the right mixture of language is to start to think about, well, who are our stakeholders, and of our stakeholders, what do they expect from us? Like what do they expect? What are they looking for? What do they need from us? And likewise, what do we expect or need from them? And then what is our level of influence with them? Do we have a strong influence with them, or do we need to grow that influence and have some conversation around that? And so again, the 5 that we listed were the community, nonprofit organizations, developers, city and county planners, which we separated from local governments. Local government was more of a local elected, and maybe I should explicitly state that. But just think about that when you think about local governments, local elected, and then you can add others as you see fit as you go have your conversation. But really, I want you to be thinking about, what do our stakeholders need from us, or what do they want from us or expect of us? What do we need or want from them? And again, I think as Shelby called out, that those are 2 important. That's a good distinction to make. And then what is our level of influence, or what is our perceived level of influence? Maybe we have more than we think we do, or maybe we don't have as much as we think we did. But what do you perceive your level of influence with these stakeholders? Any questions before we break you out?
Can I wordsmith?
Sure.
I think it's more than just city and county planners. There are other staff positions within our government
Okay.
that just don't happen to be planners. That's a term of art, planner.
Quick
They
question.
plan.
So to that point, quick question: is it should that just be city and county staff, or
Yeah, I
are they
think
such diverse
staff and
stakeholders?
elected.
It should just be staff.
I think it's staff and elected are your 2 categories.
Okay. And then the bottom one, local government, just know that it means elected. And then I changed it on team 1. I'll go ahead and change it in team 2 as well. So, okay, we'll give you, we'll start out with 10 minutes to have your conversation. If you need more time, we'll give you more time. And I see Christine's joined us. Welcome, Christine. Glad you're here. And we're going to break you out for your conversations now. So we'll see you about 1:18. Have a good conversation. All right, welcome back, everyone. It's so fun as the facilitators. Normally, we'd love to be in person with you all and like going and eavesdropping on your conversations, but it feels kind of creepy, like you jump in your breakout room. And so we do just kind of look at the conversations you're having through looking at the Google Doc. It's really fascinating to see this. Now, just in the interest of time, we're not going to go through everything that you all have put up there. We do have a couple of guiding conversations that I'm curious to hear about. And one is this: as you all were doing this, were there did you all have any ahas, like, oh, I didn't think about that, or oh, this is changing the way that we're seeing how we need to engage with people? Were there any did you see anything differently or in a different way after having kind of gone through and had this conversation with your group?
Well, I'll say for me, the approach of being oftentimes when even on the partnership, I think of as an elected official. But to sit here and think for a minute, well, wait a minute, what do I need from the RHP as an elected official is a different that's a different perspective that I've not often taken on. So this exercise kind of pulled that out of me.
Okay, great.
Something that was said in our group that Keith said that kind of resonated with me is when we think of the word advocacy, it doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't need to only be we're advocating at the local government in order to get X, Y, or Z. It's advocating on behalf of community, advocating, going to developers to talk about what they need, going to the nonprofit sector and talking about what they need. But that can go in many directions, not just towards the governments.
Yeah, great. Any other new ways of seeing these relationships or these connections?
I think as a partnership, we've not given a lot of, well, I haven't. So I'm not meaning to make everybody else guilty by being on a meeting with me. But like doing this exercise for the county staff, I don't know that in my partnership work, I've given a lot of thought to the statement I said about our own county that we ask too much of we ask more of our staff than what they can deliver. And how does the partnership help make that case to the localities that if you overwork your staff, you know, a lot of it obviously comes back to the electeds and the administration because they're defining the priorities. But to think of the workload and the asks of staff, when you hear some of the things that are listed elsewhere, what developers need, what community needs, it's just a perspective there that I haven't often thought about in my partnership work.
Picking up on the word advocacy again, I think there's a real role for the Central Virginia Regional Housing Partnership to advocate at the state level. And I know we keep trying to do that, but that's one of the big financial sources. And with, at least to the untrained eye, uncertainties about the new government, let's hope that the effort started with the last elected body can be forwarded to the new body so that the state can continue to keep a focus on affordable housing as a priority statewide, which means more funding for us here.
As you all were having your conversations, did you find that as you thought about what stakeholders needed from you or what they wanted, that there were some competing priorities that, well, this group wants this from us and this group wants that from us, and well, they're diametrically opposed or they don't go together well. Did you see any of that?
I think one thing we talked about, which was important, is I think the community, and probably maybe more than just the community, probably wants to see things from us that might be unrealistic for our group to be able to even deliver. And so education on behalf, educating the community or those other stakeholders about, hey, this is how we see ourselves making the most impact in these areas, and this is specifically what we can do with your help, I think is a key piece of what the community needs from us. That was part of our conversation, which I thought was interesting. So that, I don't know, that's not direct answer to your question, Chris, but I think it's somewhat related about, it was just kind of made us think differently about differing opinions of what we're even here for.
Sure. Giving clarity about this is what we exist to do and what we're going to do, and not creating unrealistic standards or expectations from others. Yeah. Keith.
Chris, when you mentioned about expectations and what people needed from us, it just made me think for a second, what do we need from them? Right? What do we need from the stakeholders, from them? It's a little bit of a one-sided conversation. It should be two-sided, right? What we need from them, and then, what they need from us. Or did I miss that conversation when I had to jump out?
So there's a second column in there that you get to ask that to fill in that blank. So yeah, you're right. It's a both and. It's not an either or.
One of the things we said is that we need from all of the groups is financial support to continue to fund our efforts.
Yeah. Okay.
So everybody's looking for money.
All right.
And then what we need, or what we should put on, just have to take the chance to kind of sell the value of that a little bit. And Keith and I discovered at our regional presentation or our conference presentation, people were fascinated by the grouping of who was in this collective.
Mm.
So one of the things we talked about was that in a lot of ways, when the partnership, like on my board knows that this group is made up of different voices. It's not just one nonprofit or one locality. So it's almost an objective bit of advice where it's not a political advice or whatever. It's a well thought, well-rounded because of the different stakeholders at this table that you can rely on and count on. And I think that's a value.
Mhm.
And I think people look to us for that.
Thanks for bringing that up, Ned. But my biggest takeaway from the 2 presentations we did over there, and 3, including Anthony, after our one that Ned and I did, the number one question that people, you knew you did a successful chat when you were talking longer afterward with people asking questions, but everybody was asking, how did you do this? How did you bring all these bodies together? So maybe something we ought to think a little bit. Ned and I talked about potentially doing a roadshow for this conversation, is maybe we ought to have a little component in that on helping other regions do the same thing.
Well, and Keith, that's a great segue to the next exercise we're going to do, because we want to talk about what you all are best in the world at. What is your secret sauce that you'd be able to share? And by the way, just as an aside, we're working with some other housing clients in other regions of the state, and they've referenced that presentation in connecting with you at that conference, unprompted by us. We just talked generally about the concept, and so just kudos to you all, and that's great to know that people are listening and seeing that. But before we go to this next exercise, I do want to take a quick time check. It is technically 90 minutes into, we got started a little late, but it's technically 90 minutes into our scheduled time. Do people need a break? Do we need a 5-minute break? Do you want to push on through? I see some heads nodding like break. All right. Is it okay if we just do 5? Is it all right if we do 5? Is that cool? All right, great. So it's 1:37. We'll come back at 1:42 and dive in. So go ahead and mute your audio, mute your screen, and we'll come back at 1:42 to continue our work together. Thanks, everyone. All right, everyone. Welcome back. And by the way, this is a perfectly safe environment. If you have food and drink that you want to bring with you into it and munch and continue whatever you're doing while we continue the conversation, totally fine, totally acceptable. All right. So as people are coming back, everything that we're doing today is intended to be like kind of fodder and kind of things to keep in mind as we go to the next exercise. So everything's kind of building on itself, so that way that by the end, we're kind of keeping the whole day and all the conversation we've had up to this point as we kind of bring things to a close at the end of the day. So just keep these things in mind. And again, as I said earlier, everything that has been part of the Google Doc will go into a report that we will send out to you all. So if it gets captured on there, it's going to be in the report. So I just want to reiterate that. Okay. Well, now we're going to move on to the next exercise. Is called Hedgehog. And this comes from Jim Collins' book, Good to Great. He says one of the things that separates great organizations from good organizations is the sense of a hedgehog principle or hedgehog concept. Now, if you've ever seen a hedgehog, they're these cute, furry little animals that the only reason that they're still around today is because they have very few natural predators, because they can do one thing really well. They can curl up into a ball, project these spikes, and they have very few natural predators, and so they can roll away from anything that would try to eat them. And so he uses that idea and that principle and saying, well, organizations typically need to have a good sense of who they are and a good sense of what is their one thing. And he says that one thing tends to be made up of kind of this kind of where the it's how you think about yourselves. And there are three parts to that. And let me share my screen so you can see that. And the three parts are, what are you most passionate about? What is the organization most passionate about? Secondly, what are you, or can you be, or do you want to be best in the world at? What is it that you do better than anybody else, that you have the ability to do better than anybody else in your area or your region? And then lastly, and we talked about this a little bit last time, is what drives your economic or resource engine? You know you need funding, and someone said, well, we have to show the value to so that people will fund us, but what drives that value? What would make people want to give to you? What is the brand, the image that you share, that you connect with people on? What drives your ability and capacity to engage others and get people to volunteer and be a part of it? That's your resource engine in the nonprofit sector. It's kind of a resource engine. So we're going to invite you to spend some time thinking about these three things and what are you best in the world at? What are you most passionate about? And what drives your economic or your resource engine? You can put multiple things in this, but want to see kind of how you all see yourselves, because that disciplined thought will ultimately lead to disciplined action, which is kind of the next exercise we're going to do. Any questions before I break you out into breakout rooms? Okay, hearing none, we're going to give you 10 minutes to have this conversation and then bring you back to debrief together. So we will see you at 1:56.
So she like hand.
All right, welcome back, everyone. And so, again, fascinating to watch the conversations unfolding there. So I'm going to share screen and would love to hear each team just share briefly kind of about your work. And so here we'll start with team one. Tell us a bit about your hedgehog principle here. Give us the highlights, best in the world, most passion, economic resource engine.
Well, we're all waiting on Ian to report out.
Where's our scribe?
Stepped away.
He stepped away for a minute, I think.
Well, we can do it. I mean,
That's unfair.
we'll give him a
Somebody
chance.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Anthony.
Well, just what Ned was talking about before, bringing together the housing stakeholders together was important. I mean, we also had a good conversation that it's not necessarily like there's still work for us to do in terms of diversity of racial or economic background partners, but in terms of bringing together housing stakeholders, different members of that sector, there's I think a power there, which is something that we do pretty well, and identifying who those folks should be in terms of those different parts of the sectors. And I think we've been successful at. So.
Right. And so which of these are you most passionate about as an organization?
Who else wants to take it?
I'll go ahead and dive in. So this is, again, first meeting, but I have gathered from everybody that we're all passionate about housing, affordable housing, and then making sure that we're having actionable items. I'm sure all of us have been on in at least one or two boards or meetings or something where people talk and no action comes from it. Everybody in this group is about action, as well as collaboration and advocacy, which are two of the aspects that we touched on earlier today.
Yeah, awesome. All right. And then driving your economic and resource engine, it goes back to, it ties into nicely your ability to draw from a variety of stakeholders and the relationships that are built when bringing people together, and then trust. So I think that's great. That's good. Awesome. Good work, team one. Team two, tell us a little bit about your hedgehog principle here.
You want to chime in, Christine, on this?
I can. Yep. Being best in the world is just convening and bringing together diverse thought in order to identify potential solutions. We're good at, education or creating opportunities for information sharing through the webinar series and previously the in-person events. And then most passionate about is creating opportunities for residents to have choice. I think, Keith, was it you that said that was Habitats or Dan's, the ladder of opportunity?
That's right.
Helping provide opportunity for people to move within the housing continuum and not feel like they're stuck in one place, increasing the stock, definitely for all of us. And then identifying action. We're all passionate about wanting to get results, and see change and see impact, whether it's in our work or the work that occurs because of what we are able to influence. And then the resource engine was the human capital around the table.
Awesome. Okay.
If I can add just something quickly to that, and this comment kind of ties all three of these together. And it's something that I heard or listened to Ned about a couple of times in Region Housing Partnership, and every time that he may not think this, but I actually listen to what he says. He talks about the impact of this body on his board, where at these round tables we have these discussions, and that everybody learns a little bit about everything. He brings his information back to his boards, or if I learn something about that, I bring it back to the private sector. So that's what I think we're really good at. I think we're all very super passionate about it. But every time Ned brings that up, it reminds me of what we are really good at and passionate about. So Ned, thank you for bringing that up on a regular basis.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, and this is the whole point of kind of having this idea of kind of what we're best in the world at, what we're passionate about, what drives our engine. We have this disciplined thought about, or Collins calls it disciplined thought. We recognize and understand who we are, and then we talk about now how do we apply it? Because both groups said actions. We don't want to just talk about stuff. We don't have these really wonderful philosophical conversations. We want to see impact. We want to see change happen, good, positive change happen because of this work, which is going to be the next exercise we do. So Rachel, I'm gonna scroll down and hand it over to you and let you introduce it to us.
So building upon Jim Collins, he talks about a flywheel. In that, he says that there's no single defining action that's really making you a success. It is a process. It's a big wheel, and that it's a spoke. And so anytime that you're able to increase momentum on that spoke, you are building, your actions are compounding on top of each other. So that way, each time you're doing something, you're following that same process and you're being successful. So we are going to take a look at what has made you successful at this point? What is, like Chris was saying, your secret sauce that is making it so that you are able to keep building momentum and keep working towards your goals and doing the work that you all do. So the first thing we're going to do is we're together as a group. We're going to talk about, I want us to identify 5 successes. And success means it met or exceeded your expectations. You put this activity together, you did this thing, and it went above and beyond, or it did exactly what we needed it to do. So what are 5 successes of your organization?
Sorry, I'm eating some food, so I'm off video, but I think the housing plans was a success. Pretty big project, but we, did it. So I would say that should be there.
I would add to that these regular, what I call lunch and learns that we've been doing in the middle of COVID. Super successful. We've grown them for only a few people to somewhere between 75 and 100 folks doing it. To do that in the middle of COVID and get that kind of engagement, I think is pretty huge.
I think one win is leveraging funding. I think because we have a regional partnership, we're seen as a region that prioritizes housing. And so, becoming grantees for like the rent and mortgage relief program or the Virginia Housing PDC grants, the Virginia eviction reduction, that's because we have a regional housing partnership that we're able to leverage.
Yeah, and this isn't a new win. This is building off that. The variety of those different like funding sources or those grants is really, I think, a testament to the variety of people that sit on the regional housing partnership, because, being able to give out money to encourage development or to fund development, and then also at the same time engaging with Piedmont Housing Alliance on eviction reduction efforts. Those are 2 very, very different activities that fall into the same housing bubble, but we all know how big that can be. So I think the variety is really important to note as well.
The website that we developed and put up.
Yeah, for sure.
EA. Yep. That's good.
So now, as you all are looking at these successes, what are the ways that these successes are connected? What are the components of each of these successes? Or is there a component that is taking place in each of these successes?
Yeah, Christine and Ian and TJ PDC staff. It's huge. I mean, it's huge because none of this stuff have been able to get done with volunteer board members. So.
And so even to extrapolate on that, not just the staff, but having the financial resources to staff the partnership. Without dedicated staff to this, we wouldn't be able to accomplish with a group of volunteers what you can accomplish with staff. And not that you all couldn't do it, you know what I mean? You have your other jobs that you have to do.
I think what's common to them all is that it's again getting back to the multidisciplinary nature of the partnership. It's I think each and every one of these 5 accomplishments have had private, public, just the whole diverse makeup of the partnership has been a strong contributor to the success of those 5 items.
I would say one is a committed executive committee to continue to move things forward and continue to support the staff's work. Through a pandemic, it would have been really easy for a lot of the work we were doing to kind of waver a little bit and be put on hold. But I think we actually jumped into gear during the pandemic and accomplished more than we ever thought was possible.
And this is kind of related to all of them, frankly, but I think what's successful about these 2 is that they were impactful projects, but they were also like doable. And so kind of choosing what made sense and what was achievable, I think is a really important skill that was done well by the group.
we were able to utilize our resources, which were as limited as they were, both human capital and fiscal capital, to achieve some pretty big things. Well done to everybody.
We could stop at 5, but does anybody have anything else that they see?
Yeah, I would say that there were educating the public about the issues around affordable housing.
I was wondering if I was like, aren't you guys sharing stuff? I was thinking in my head, but yes. So now these are the components of the flywheel. Now we have to figure out, how do they compound on each other? What comes first? Out of these things, what's the first thing that has to happen in order for the rest of these things to happen?
You mean among those different ways?
Yes, of the 4 to 6 that you just listed, staffing, financials to staff, makeup, all of those components that you all just listed. What's the order in which they happen that they're able to compound on each other?
If it were up to me, I would definitely say impactful and achievable goals, because I don't think anything matters if we're not doing something that's having an impact. And if we don't have anything to measure success with, I mean, it's hard to keep pushing forward.
Okay.
That's really interesting, Shelby. I'm glad you brought that up, because it's so hard. This is such a hard question and a good one, because I was going to say, because you're right, I think in a lot of ways, if you don't have the impetus to do something important, then you can't pull together the partnership, and you can't pull together the funding to support it. Like, there needed to be that need that the community saw, and you had to define it properly. So that is really interesting. But I guess as a second thing, I would say, this is a chicken or egg thing, but I mean, the financial resources to help staff participate, I think, was key. I mean, there needed to be a home for this, because there was a conversation in the community about, like, there was this general, like, consensus that there needed to be a community-wide collaboration around affordable housing, but it was a little bit of a nose game until, you know, TJPDC stepped up and said, okay, we can figure out how to get this launched. And I think that's key. So
I'm gonna go slightly out of order and say maybe one success that ranked towards the bottom is private/public and diverse makeup of partnership. I definitely think that's an area of increased growth for this group that I look forward to helping with.
That's good. So what comes before? Is that coming because of the financial resources to staff the partnership? Like, what's the order?
To me, that would be number 6 at the very
Okay.
bottom.
Okay. Oops.
I want to make sure I want to understand. We're saying that the private-public diverse makeup of the partnership is the last item of that 6. Is that what we're saying? Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah,
Yes, that's what, and I think of this as a cycle. So a circle that like it continues to build on itself, so that you know, to the example, one of the examples here is this, you know, this is for a specific elementary school, that they select teachers infused with passion. And once they've done that, they build collaborative improvement teams, which then assess student progress early and often, which then achieve learning for each and every kid, which then enhance reputation, which replenishes the passion teacher. They've got new teachers, so it builds on itself, continues to grow and grow impact. So the more they run that wheel, the stronger and the better and the greater impact they have. And so that's kind of what we're thinking here is, in what order would you put these 6 things to be your flywheel, which drives it? And so they're all on there, and they're not of greater or lesser importance. It's just what's the order for them to get there. And what I heard Shelby saying is that's important, and it's at the end because it drives.
I think the diverse makeup of the partnership early, right from day one, is the key. Then we've got this, you know, the staff to support it and actually produce what we discuss. But I think that partnership is is one of the keys. I'll take exception to the model because every spoke in a wheel is equally important.
Yes.
Yeah, yes, that's right. When we're not saying they're not equally important, we're saying that they're all important. It's the order of getting them important. I think what I heard Shelby say is yes, and it's like, we've got this and there's more work to be done to increase that, to
Right.
grow the diversity, to grow that. And that, again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Shelby, but that's kind of what I heard.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's what I was going to say too, is that
I would just throw out Shelby's point in our team, which of course not everybody got to hear, but you know, the private public nature of the pillars that we have, the stakeholder groups, is not necessarily diverse. So we have to be careful. You know, Shelby's point is well taken from our team conversation. You know, diversity of when you use the word diversity, it doesn't necessarily mean because we've put nonprofit, for-profit, community, elected staff together that that's diverse. Those are identified stakeholder groups. So, you know, the private public is one connotation, diverse is different. Socioeconomic status, all of that is different. So I don't want to get, I appreciate being mindful of not getting caught in the trap of using the word diverse when we're identifying different stakeholder groups. Then do we have a diverse makeup from those stakeholder groups? I think is the point there. So those two maybe those even get pulled out, that the stakeholder groups come in that early order. And now as we continue to grow and become more impactful and effective as an organization, the diversity is going to help us achieve that, which would be later in the flywheel.
So to make sure I'm hearing this correctly, it sounds like you're saying the public-private makeup of the partnership leads to the impactful, achievable goals?
Yes.
Okay, so that.
All right, got it.
But one of these folks are not any more important than the other. That's what I
Yes.
wanted to make sure I got
That's
my
correct.
brain wrapped around.
But
But
we can't admit as a partnership, either the broader partnership or the economic or the executive committee, that we're diverse, is my point.
I
So
agree
we
100%.
pulled together the stakeholder groups. So to continue to grow and be an impactful and effective as an organization, the diversity, which is what we've started to, you know, when we ask the question, do we have the right folks at the table or do we have the right people at the executive committee? I mean, early on, we said that's what the strategic plan was going to help us resolve or help us figure out. So I like the idea of maybe breaking those out.
Yeah.
And then they continue to build on each other.
Yeah, I spoke to that third item that there, and if I use the word diverse, I should not have, because of the connotation of it being socioeconomically diverse. The whole point was it's the 5 different stakeholder groups, which is not diversity in the sense that general public uses the term.
So is it then a diverse and committed leadership and executive committee?
Whoever used the word diversity of thought earlier was probably what captures what has occurred with us,
Okay,
because diversity of thought has existed.
so maybe it's the way that the leadership and executive team thinks. That's a component.
And I think that grabs those 5, what actually comes out of those 5 stakeholder groups, that diversity of thought.
put a little historical context to this. When we all put this together, and I remember having this conversation with Christine, we at the time, we wanted to add more, right? You know, there should be more at the table. There should be more here. And, you know, at the time, you know, we didn't have the organizational structure we have now. And maybe the conversation we're having now, which I'm excited about, is we need to bring diverse more. There needs to be more at the table, but my brain is looking at this spoke, and I just wanted to make sure I understood it. If we drop one out, then that wheel doesn't work any longer. That's right. It falls apart. So each one is equally as important, but I've always been of the opinion that somehow or another we got to grow who's at the table more than who's at the table at the moment. Instead of using the word diverse, we just need a larger pool, in my opinion. of entities and folks at the table.
Okay.
Whole conversation is making me think of one of the other points we have written down here, committed leadership / executive committee. I think it's important that we all realize what power that, I'm going to use the collective we have at this table, and that the conversations like this will influence the trajectory of this. So I would say, I don't know if we have a 4 yet, but I would maybe put that. as
Okay.
4.
Yeah. All right.
Yep, I agree. And I think it seems like the staff would come after that because really staff takes direction from the board. And a good staff sometimes gets the board to give it its direction. Well done, Christine.
And then the last piece would be that number 6 would be the educating the public around issues of affordable housing. So now we're going to test it. Let's take a success. Let's start with the housing plan. Can we go through the flywheel? So it starts with diversity of thought, impactful, achievable goals, financial resources, committed leadership, staff, and then educating the public. Can we use this flywheel to describe what happened with that regional housing plan?
I think absolutely. As I'm thinking how that went through, it literally, I think it
Walk us
literally
through
went
it.
that way.
Let's walk
Right.
through it. Yeah.
Christine, did it not go that way?
What way, Keith? I'm sorry.
Okay, we're talking about the housing plan, you know, the 6 steps that we all put together. That was pretty much the path and the genesis of that plan, correct?
So diversity of thought came together to talk about the plan, and talking about it, you came up with some impactful, achievable goals.
Yeah.
Then you said, oh, we need some financial resources to get this out there to do it. We've got a committed leadership and executive committee who kind of helped get that, make sure that happened and worked, which then got translated to the committed and passionate and staff who then educated the public with the plan. And then did it add to the diversity of thought?
The only comment I would have on that is I think number 5 was way much further up. We may have had the diversity of thought on how to do this as a group, as an executive committee, but you know, staff was the one that took it by the horns and then went into it. So I almost would think that would be a number 3, because staff is the one that went out and found the money.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be a stickler on this issue either, but I think it would not have happened at all. So for me, that needs to be like a foundational piece to it. And also for the housing plans in particular, because I chaired that group, I mean, without staff, we would not have had diversity of thought, because it really took staff to kind of pull it out from committee members and from the community. So that's also an interesting idea too, is that we, you know, they play back and forth, and sometimes it becomes more easeful than others. But for the housing plan, you know, it took a lot of time for the staff to get input from community members in those local jurisdictions, from the different boards, and from our own committee, frankly. So I don't know, that I just wanted to offer that out there too.
As the current chair, Anthony, I couldn't agree with you more. That was what I was trying to articulate. I just come up with the words. I think number 1 needs to be diversity of thought, and staff needs to be part of number 1, because you don't have that without staff, and then everything else flows after that. And as I'm looking at the achievable goals or remembering them from up above, almost every single one of them went through this path, and then staff was right there at the top with the diversity of the board, because we needed staff to guide us through that conversation, from my perspective.
So it sounds like you guys are saying first you need the passionate staff, and then that leads to diversity in thought, which leads to impactful and achievable goals, which allows you to get your financial resources.
Well, I
And
mean, this is an interesting exercise but that staff doesn't even start if the financial resources to staff it didn't occur.
It's interesting. I was thinking that the whole time, like, and as much as I appreciate the comments on how staff made it happen, I almost see this in reverse. You have to have committed leadership at the executive committee in order to bring diverse financial resources to staff the partnership with staff, so that staff can then create, you know, do the action items to create the accomplishable goals. I don't remember where that one is, like impactful and achievable goals, in order to educate the public about the issues of affordable housing, so that we can continue to have a committed leadership and executive committee to bring in the resources to keep the work going.
So for the first is the committed leadership and executive committee, then is financial resources, then it's staff, then it's diversity of thought, impactful goals, and then education. Okay.
That's
My
at least how I was thinking. I don't know that that works for everybody, but I was interested as that people were going down, my mind was going up.
my
So
grant
Chris-
writing brain is like, can we get funding if we don't have the impactful and achievable goals to then get started? And, you know, maybe it is a chicken and the egg situation. And I think, no, to Chris's point, this is in a circle so that it's all working together. But yeah, can we get funding if we don't have goals?
We did. We staffed it and started working on it before we named what the goals of the body were.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
We had to form bylaws. We had to put who was
Yeah.
going to be on the group. We had to go out and get people involved. And all of that took staff time that the TJPDC agreed to pay for. So none of that happens without the funding to get this. I mean, staff just didn't volunteer their time. So
And I might need a separate meeting about that.
Yeah, so this is an interesting conversation, because I think maybe one just doesn't value his time as much as I should in this process. But Christine, you're right. You know, that these things came from a passionate executive committee that said, let's try this. What do you think about this, staff? And you know, the more you talked about that, the more I played our process is what we've done. And it really started with this volunteer executive committee to say, okay, look, this is what we want to do. Let's start getting funding. And then it kind of went into staff down from there. So
One thing I want to create a distinction between is the genesis of the partnership and the birth story, and like how it came, the origin story of how it came to be, may or may not illustrate your flywheel. And so I just want to draw a distinction there. So, I mean, I think it is an important story, and it's a good story. I think also when we look back at your at kind of your wins here, your successes, you look at like, is there a replicable pattern? Is there a flywheel that we followed that would then continue to build on itself? So, because ultimately there's this educating the public around issues of affordable housing, and when people know more and they're more, and they see the goals being achieved, it builds whatever that next thing is. I mean, like everything should lead to the next thing, should lead to the next thing, should lead to the next thing. And so it's this constant circle that as you go around it, it gets faster and faster and faster, but then ultimately more.
But to add to that, Chris, you know, this lunch and learn thing, this was an executive committee roundtable. We had a conversation, say, we're in COVID, what can we do to continue this process? And there was a discussion at the executive committee level. Then staff, you know, we were fortunate to have the funding at that time, and staff moved forward. So I never really thought about that first until this conversation, but it seemed to really start from the passion of the executive committee. Maybe I'm looking at it with rose-colored glasses, but the more I think about it, the more most of those items all came from this small committee that grew from there. I don't know, does any other executive committee members think differently?
I don't know if I think differently. I'm just saying that we're there, Chris, in this cycle. I mean, this just past year, we had limited funds. We had to decide what we were going to do with it, or if we had to go out and ask for more money. And right now, we've made asks of money so that we can continue into the next fiscal year. So that financial resources to staff the partnership is a very real question that the executive committee has been dealing with since June or July, and will inform once we find out what we're going to do after this current fiscal year. So I think that cycle does play itself out.
So it kind of sounds like you guys are saying you need passionate and committed leadership who are able to think about impactful and achievable goals. Then you find the financial resources to support staff and the things that you need to do. Once you have that, you're able to use diversity of thought to figure out what does this look like? We want this goal to achieve. What does it look like? You have your passionate staff in the right places doing that work, which leads to educating the public about the issues. Does that feel better?
I just would add in my vernacular, we need this folks that think outside the box, right? We need folks that think outside the box to help solve a huge problem. Diversity of thought is probably the proper terminology, but in my world, we'd say, okay, let's think outside the box. What can we do outside the box to solve whatever struggle that's before us? So personally, that's the term I like. I'm sure it's just the way in my vernacular.
Yeah. And I think that'll also be helpful when you all phase out so that the partnership can continue going. These are the qualities of the partnership that we look for, so that way we are able to be successful in this work. Do you all feel your hedgehog principle in this flywheel? Do you see what you're most passionate about? Do you see what you're best in the world at? Do you see your resource engine being fed through this flywheel?
I just want to add and as I'm thinking about this, one of the wins, for what it's worth, it may not have to be a bullet point on it. The very fact we're doing this is a huge win. The very fact that we started off with kind of on a shoestring, like, very limited, how we're going to do this, how's this going to work. This has grown over time. The fact that we are, with limited funds, by the way, trying to achieve a long-term strategic plan, and what I said earlier, I'm coming off the board right at some point, right? There's going to be a new chairperson. There's going to be somebody else. From my perspective, how will this organization continue forward? And this strategic plan is, I believe, a huge part and a huge win, and something we can point to the folks we're trying to educate. Here's our plan. So I think that, in my opinion, that should go in the win. This was a big win for this fiscal year, for sure.
So I think that as we're, and our intent in having this conversation is not to get this down 100%, but really to get you all thinking about, like, what is contributing to our success, and how can we continue to replicate that and scale that so we can continue to have growth, and then how would we use that then to plan the way forward? If this is our model for what are some things that we would do that we would want to achieve? And so with our last exercise, and Rachel, I'm calling an audible here, just looking at time. So I want us to think about what we would call our big, hairy, audacious goals. And so these are just things that you think that the partnership, based on the context that we named earlier, what are the things going on, the positive and negative trends, based on the economic and political climate, based on client needs, community needs, and the uncertainties, based on all that we've talked about, based on that 6 words, why the partnership exists, who you are, what you're most passionate about, what drives your resource engine, and what you're best in the world at, and then kind of the way that you take action. Given all of that, and I'm going to change it to 3, so each group gets a third one. What are 3 big, hairy, audacious goals that you could do in the next 3 years to drive change, that you have control over? That's not about the partnership. It's about change in the community, the change that you want to see in the world around you as it regards to living out that 6-word statement. Okay, you get 3 goals, and they're big, hairy, and audacious. So when we say big, hairy, audacious goals, I mean, like, you're both excited and nervous at the same time when you think about doing it. Like, it's like if you sign up for a marathon and you've never run a mile before in your life, you're like, I know I could probably physically, but I'm scared about it. Should I do it? And or any other big thing that you've tried in your life, like, it's really scary. But imagine if we could do that. Imagine how the world would be different, or that would be different. So that's your big, hairy, audacious goals. So we're going to split you up again into 2 groups, and have you all generate. Each group's going to do 3 big, hairy, audacious goals. Any questions before we do the breakout rooms? Okay. All right. Hearing none, I'm going to open up the rooms, and I'll give you 10 minutes to name these goals. Enjoy your conversations. And the audible, sorry, I guess it wasn't clear. The audible I was going to call is that we're not going to do most important.
Okay.
I think, well, we'll see. We'll see how this goes. We'll see
Yeah.
where this lands. We might need to do start, stop, keep, need if we have time. We may not have time. So we don't need to change anything yet. Let's see how they go. So that was really interesting.
Yeah. That's more of how I imagine that going.
Well, and you know what, I think, and you know, there are a couple of things I was looking at add-ons for Google Docs, and there's one that allows you to do charts and graphs or charts and things. And I thought about but you have to have like a paid or a free account and some other thing where you created something that allows you to put it in your doc. But I think it would help if it was in that circle form. I think seeing it linearly, people are getting hung up, I think, about priority.
Order, yeah. I also think I think this activity does better when you're in person and you just use the Post-its too.
Absolutely.
So I think the digital aspect of doing this activity is a challenge. But I think, yeah, if we just had different tools to create it, I think it would be.
We could use a Padlet for it, because you can move the Post-its around in Padlet. But again, it's easier if we're facilitating and the whole group is with us, as opposed to each group trying to create their own Padlet, because that's just way complex.
See what they're talking about.
Oops. I wonder what that automatically did.
Technically, that stakeholder, that number one is like for them, right?
I know, yeah.
I'm gonna Sarah it.
Just do all caps. Say this is important, but I gave him 10 minutes, so that comes back at 2:40. All right, I'm gonna stop the restroom. I'll be right back.
Outside of. Well, it's not about you. It's about the work you do. You can pop me into that team one if you want. I can talk with them too.
Oh, it won't let you join, will it? Once you've stopped joining?
You just have to do it. Join breakout.
Yeah,
Okay.
just join breakout. Yeah. at the beginning of the conversation. All right, so we've got, all right, so land bank shows up there a couple of times. There are, again, there are two sides of a similar coin, which is growing the region membership and achieving more inclusive, diverse group of stakeholders. So it's growing in number, but also growing in diversity. Again, as per the conversation we had earlier. So there's that sense of growth that's shared there. Let's see, influencer to do. So this group really focused on more stock, generating more stock, making sure there's more stock. This is more stock, but stock in terms of varieties of different stock to get, there's a pathway and wealth, means of wealth building. And then this is a really interesting general one. Make the current region affordable for those who live outside but work within. Can they live where they work? That's a really interesting one to me, just as I think about a regional body that's looking at the whole region, and that could be applied contextually across all the different things. So again, as you hear all that read, what are your observations, your thoughts?
You started to say you were going to put screen share that list.
I'm sorry, I've got two screens and I always assume that it is sharing.
We're looking at beautiful faces here, but not
Yes.
the list.
I apologize. All right, let me shrink these even more so we can get them on one page.
Now, one of the things that I think is missing from this is like a big, hairy, audacious goal of mine is like an educated public that understands the value of housing for all and how that affects a community's health and how, what, you know, who benefits and how do we benefit from everybody having access to safe, affordable housing.
So kind of like
the whole education piece is missing out of this.
okay.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Okay.
Like an affordable housing university kind of thing? Or where the,
Well, you know, and I don't want to overuse the term, but like, you know, like combating the NIMBYism, you know, like combating or actually eradicating the idea that there's an us versus them, because affordable housing is really relative to everybody needing the same thing, the basic right of housing. That's how
It's
I think.
akin to the folks that say you shouldn't use my taxes to pay for education. I don't have kids.
Well, so it's interesting. It raises a question that Rachel and I were talking about while you are one of the breakout sessions. Is, you know, the conversation is always about affordable housing, and again, that's as we've said, that's a very nuanced. What does that mean? Who's affordable to who? That sort of thing. But is it? I mean, is it possible just for the conversation to be about housing? And again, how does that fit into the conversation? What does that look like?
it's interesting you should say that, Chris, because one of my thoughts when I made my original motion to create this at the commission was to define what is affordable housing, and it means different things to different people. What is affordable to me may be different to somebody else, right? Where we're just focusing on housing for all, which to me is a more nuanced conversation. But I've always struggled with that whole definition of that, because we resort back to the HUD version, right? The government's version, or the federal government's definition of that. But that doesn't necessarily fit the pictures. I see this as chairing the land trust all the time, that the need is so great and we just can't get folks to fit into the housing space because they don't meet that definition, right? Or just miss it by $5, which I'm dealing with right now. Just a thought.
Sure. Well, it's kind of like cramming something into the system. There's a system that exists and trying to cram this one part of it to fit the system, as opposed to saying, well, what if we think about the system differently? And Colette, it looked like you were getting ready to say something. I'm sorry, I may have cut you off. No. Okay.
That made me think of, following up on both of you guys, it made me think of like a big, hairy, audacious goal would be like personalizing or humanizing the work. You know, it's not about the statistics. It's not about the AMI. It's not about the 30% of your income or the number of square feet, or, you know, like kind of taking that, and making it like, it's about making sure I'm able to be safe, making sure that my grandmother has a ramp to get in her home when she can't walk any longer. Like those kinds of things is bringing the human side into everything we do.
Yeah.
And that's part of the education, I think.
Mhm. Perfect. Well, this is.
Let me say this about
go
the
ahead, Ned.
influencer to doer.
Mhm.
That seems to be a vision change. That's a big partnership conversation. So that one on there is a big, I mean, it fits the criteria for the exercise, but that is one that the whole partnership has to decide. Does this entity stay an influencer or turn into a doer? Because while we want to create and do action steps and do things, it's all about providing the support and the things for the localities to succeed.
Sure.
So that's a big vision shift. If
Well, I think it's a mistyping of what was said. What we talked about was facilitating development, not being a developer. So the word doer was a shortcut for saying, can we help finance housing? Period, which by the way, we appear to have already done. So maybe the problem is we're not going to go out and develop housing. I don't think anyone said that, but the word doer implies that, I guess. So maybe we could just wordsmith the doer.
Yeah.
To
Capturing that nuance. Thank you.
Oh, and
Thank you.
land bank would be that too, right? That would be
exactly.
Yeah.
You know, we can be a land bank without being a developer. We're not actually producing the final housing, but we're helping facilitate people actually building housing.
So the big two missing components of making this happen is the land and the funding. Where if we, and I've been pushing this hard, if we are the land bank and can do a trust fund, then we can influence the two missing components to it. You know, the government portion of the rezoning of that's going to track on its own, but if there is, much like what UVA is doing, right? They're providing land into this mixture, so that checks that box. And then if we can create a trust fund, to me, that, you know, if we can achieve those two things, talk about big, hairy, and audacious, the stuff that this body can achieve is off the charts from my perspective. But that's a heavy lift.
Yeah.
On that.
And this is just kind of the beginning of the conversation. So just because we've captured the ideas here doesn't mean that you're committing the partnership or yourselves or staff to doing them. Right now, we're still in kind of the big dreamy phase. We're still finishing up our conversations with stakeholders. And there's a retreat we're going to have with the entire membership of the partnership to get their we'll do similar exercises so that they will have the opportunity to think alongside with you all, and you all will participate in that as well. So this is a really, really helpful exercise. And part of it is not necessarily the actual stuff we capture on paper, although we keep that and we share that out, but it is also just having the conversations and just thinking through it together as a leadership team. We're 3 minutes to the end of our time, and I want to honor everybody's time. Any last thoughts or questions before we wrap up?
I do have a procedural question, if you don't mind. Ian and Christine, is this this is a formal public meeting, is that correct? So we're going to have to actually adjourn it and have one more public comment just to check that box? Does that
Yes.
sound okay? Great. So Chris, if you don't mind, just give me enough time to do that.
Will do. Ned?
Chris, you're going to speak of next steps, I assume.
Yes, I will. Thank you.
I'll let you go. I'll hold off to the next meeting, just in the interest of time.
Okay. So next steps from here is we're finishing up our gather conversations. We are going to generate a report from that. And I need to go back and look at our notes. But one of the next steps is, as I mentioned earlier, is to have a gathering of the entire partnership of all the members and have them go through a similar exercise. It will probably be, I can't remember what the timeline was. I believe it's after we've written our report and shared that with the strategic planning team. this body. And so that, then once we've done all that, then we will take all the data we've gathered. So the report and everything, these kinds of exercises, and we will craft a draft plan that's initially drafted. It's meant to be torn apart, edited, revised by you all to then craft a plan where you all feel like, yes, this is the direction we want to go in based on all the inputs we've heard, all the conversations we've had with external stakeholders and internal stakeholders. And so that work will happen later this spring. So that's kind of the pathway that we're going on.
Can I ask a question about when the full partnership comes together? So that's also a public meeting, and often we have other stakeholders that attend those meetings, staff from the county, Stacy's, other nonprofits. If they were to come to that partnership meeting, would they be participating or would they be observing the process of the partnership members?
So that's a great question. And what do you all, I mean, you're talking about, to me, anybody who has an interest in state could participate. But again, I don't want to speak on behalf of you all. That's a decision that you all get to.
Christine, I look at this as a roundtable discussion. And I think we've set precedent that roundtable discussions, it's the members only involved in that. I'm obviously the body as a whole can make it, make a different decision, but on a precedent set, we've set that precedent that it would only be the members, the full membership to participate in the conversation. Am I off track?
Thanks, Scott.
Christine, am I off track?
No, I just realized I waved just to you all. She was already off by the time I delayed, waved. No, you're not off track. I just wanted to set that, make sure that that's what everybody agrees upon so that that's clearly communicated in the next meeting.
I'm not saying that's the way it has to go. Does everybody feel that should be the path? If they feel otherwise, I mean, we want to make best use of our time.
I think if people show up, they should be able to participate. Personally, I don't see a problem with it. I mean, I see difficulties with it, like if there's like 30 people that show up, like logistical difficulties, but I don't think that usually happens.
Okay.
I agree with Anthony. I agree with Anthony for what it's worth. I think if they show up, they should have the ability to comment. I do think that some healthy parameters around the conversation would be helpful, whatever that might look like.
So a compromise might be, we have two parts. This is a public meeting, folks. So we have two parts of the public meeting end of it where public members can get involved in it. I'm just, as one who's chairing it, I just don't want the meeting to get out of control and take much longer because we have 30 people. So I think I hear it. I agree. I think if there's a reasonable number of people, they should be allowed to participate. We tend to do that informally, but we do have an agenda that we're going to have to stick to in a timeline. So I'll just keep time on the clock, and we'll just have to handle that very delicately when we do it.
And I have March 23rd as the date for that meeting. Is that accurate? I see, yeah, Ian's nodding his head. Okay, just making sure. Okay. Well, this has been great, y'all. It's been great feedback. If there's nothing else for the good of the order, I will hand it over to Keith to follow your procedures, your operating procedures.
So we're in the second public comment portion, seeing no public unless I'm missing something. Ian, is this okay? Great. We'll just open and close that, and then I want to thank everybody for it and apologize for my late arrival and slow engagement in this, but it was a bit of a hectic morning for myself. So thank you, everybody, and I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Got a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Anthony. And Christine, if you could stay on so we can kind of brainstorm this next meeting a little bit, I'd appreciate it. We're adjourned, folks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Ned, can you stay on too for a second? Oh, he jumped off.